This is Mark Guerrero. Welcome to East LA Music Stories, episode number 14. And my guests today are two of the Delgado Brothers of the Delgado Brothers Band, although you don't call it Delgado Brothers Band, do you? But sometimes you do.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah. Anyway, for those who don't know, they're a fantastic group. Sometimes they're referred to as a blues band, but they're a lot more than that. I would say they're blues based and they can play the blues. But many of their original songs are not blues, but they're just great songs. They've got 5 albums out. In fact, I have them all right here.
Cool, thank you.
So my guests are Joey Delgado, raise your hand, and the one with the magnificent beard, Bobby Delgado, his older brother. Bobby goes back to the ancient Jurassic period of the East Side Sound, early 60s, along with me. And we're going to get into that in a minute, which is a fun topic. But first, I'd just like to say that I happen to have seen you guys perform last Wednesday out here in Palm Springs,
right,
at the Cascade Lounge of the Agua Caliente Resort and Casino. And it was a fantastic show. And I wound up introducing the band, right?
Yeah, I brought you up.
You kind of like half kiddingly said, "Why don't you come up?" And I did.
No, I wasn't kidding.
You weren't kidding?
No, totally not.
Oh, okay. But I wanted to, so I went up there and introduced the band, which was great.
Although you probably would have wore long pants had you known.
That's right. We all wear shorts out here. That's our uniform.
And I'm kidding.
I didn't wear shorts to the next gig, though.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yes. But anyway, the band was great. And was that 4-piece?
Yeah, that was a 4-piece band.
Yeah. It was just yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of a last minute gig. They Andy, the guy that books the acts at the Cascade, had called me a couple of weeks earlier, and of course we were planning our big 35th anniversary party, and we were extremely busy doing that. And then I thought, well, it'd be a great little warm-up gig for us. And we haven't played a proper venue in Palm Springs in forever. So I took the opportunity and it worked out great. I was a little nervous because I don't know who's going to show up to this thing. And we actually had a decent little crowd. They were small but mighty, And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the show was fantastic. And I was waiting for you guys to play my favorite song of yours, which is Learn to Fly. And you guys weren't playing it. And you got to the last song. You said, for our last song. And I said, what about Learn to Fly? And then you guys did it, which was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And then you were still able to do the last song. I didn't want to feel guilty that they cut you off on your finale.
No, they were fine. They were fine.
Yeah. So that went great. It was a great night and you guys were fantastic. Then like 3 nights later, you played at the Langham Hotel in Pasadena. And I went to that as well. I was going to LA anyway to see the anniversary of the moratorium at Belvedere Park. Tierra played, some of the people, Chiolos Lados. Anyway, so Saturday night, a few nights later, I went to see you over there. And boy, talk about a swanky venue. My God, I drove up. It was like it was a palace. I was going to Versailles.
You've never been there?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I expected some nice hotel, like a Marriott.
Yeah. It was originally the Henry Huntington Hotel who built the Huntington Library, and he built that hotel for his friends and family that would visit from the East Coast. So then it became dilapidated and worn down. And then I believe in the early 80s, the Ritz-Carlton bought it and totally restored the entire building except for the Viennese ballroom that we were in and the Georgian ballroom. Everything else was brand new.
Wow.
So that room was like built in 1920 something, 24 maybe.
And Joe, we've been playing there for how long?
Yeah, so
because of Chef Denis.
Well, no, I mean, what happened is I about my day job. I'm an audiovisual coordinator, and so I'm working. I was working at that hotel, probably in the 80s, early 90s, and my mind's is always racing and thinking. I go, well, how could I utilize this space for the band? And so Chef Denis, when he came to work for the Ritz-Carlton, he would book blues bands on Friday nights in the lounge. And it was a really nice lounge, but because Chef Denis was a blues harmonica aficionado, he would hire all the best guys that he knew, his friends and heroes, James Harmon, what was the guy?
Mark Humble.
Mark Hummel and but Paul DeLay. I mean, anybody that was his hero, he would book him, right? And then Chef Denny, he's so funny. He goes, you know, these guys, they would come to my hotel, they were always so nice to me. I go, Chef, you're putting up in a 5-star hotel and you're treating them like kings. They don't get treated like this. And so he goes, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So eventually we had a CD release party for our third record, A Brother's Dream. And I made a barter with the hotel that we would do their holiday party, and lieu, you know, for in trade of us doing the ballroom, the Viennese ballroom for our CD release party. So this is a funny story because we do the party for the Delgado Brothers. It's a huge success. Everybody loves it. And then fast forward to December when we're playing for the hotel. It's all the hotel employees, and most of them are primarily, you know, Mexican American or Mexican or you know, immigrants from South America, whatever. So we're playing to these people, and all right, well, we're gonna take a short break. So then when we took a break, the DJ comes on and plays a cumbia, and that was the last we played.
Oh, wow.
They didn't want nothing to do with us. But we fulfilled our, you know, but
Yeah.
the next time we did it, the next party that we did was the 30th anniversary party, which was 5 years ago. And we did the same thing. I did a barter, and we ended up playing the Ritz-Carlton summer picnic, you know, so we did like an unplugged concert on the lawn, and that was amazing. It was so much fun. You know, people, they'd buy a little lunch and they sit there and watch the band play, and we just loved it. So we've had a great relationship with them, and they've been very accommodating. So
An impressive venue. When I drove up, I couldn't believe they only had valet parking.
oh yeah,
You know, if there's no self parking, it's a
oh, you're in the middle of
serious
San Marino too.
Oh, yeah. I
They'll tow
mean,
your car away in a heartbeat.
yeah, the neighborhood, it looked like the Beverly Hillbillies house out there. I saw a bunch of houses like that. I
Exactly.
thought
Yeah,
Jed
yeah.
Clampett was going to come out. But anyway, and I wasn't that well dressed anyway. I was wearing Levi's, and I did bring a shirt with me. So I was a little more well dressed in Palm
That's
Springs.
good, Mark. That's
But
good.
anyway, yeah, and my good friend John Valenzuela came with me, who was in my band Tango with A&M, and we enjoyed the show. And then later, my friend Greg Esparza showed up from the Midnighters, sang with him for like 15 years. So they had never heard you before live, so they were very impressed. Loved the
Oh,
show.
good. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And you had an expanded band there. You had a horn section. You had a couple of background singers. You had John Avila on background singing.
Well, yeah. So the idea was the 35th anniversary, and you know, of course, the Delgado Brothers have been around longer than that, you know. But our very first album came out on High Tone Records in 1987, and so I wanted to incorporate a lot of the players that had played on our earlier album. So Joe Sublette actually played on our very first album, who played tenor sax that night, and then Paulie Sarah played on Learn to Fly, which is our 2009 release, and Daryl and Joe both played on Let's Get Back in '99. That was produced by John Duke Logan. That's how I met the guys. And then Tony Bronnagel is just an old friend, but you know, he played with the Phantom Blues Band, and you know, he just loves playing with the brothers. And of course, John Avila from Oingo Boingo, he mixed and edited our last 3 records. You know, A Brother's Dream, Learn to Fly, and Two Trains. And he's like, you know, almost like the 5th Beatle to us. You know, he has an opinion about everything. He has an ideas for everything. He's just invaluable, you know, to the band. So
And you had a female background singer as well.
that's Teresa James. Yeah.
Teresa James.
So Teresa James, we've known her for over 20 years, and she's just a awesome vocalist. And she has, I don't know, 15, 20 albums out or something. Her
Wow.
husband's a prolific songwriter, and they have a great little band. If you ever get a chance to see them, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna try to hook them up at the Cascade Lounge. They would be
Oh.
awesome there.
Nice.
And
And did you already mention who that percussionist was? Is that the other guy you mentioned?
that's Tony Bronnagel.
Okay. Yeah.
So
you had
just-
the-
Yeah, so as a point of reference, he's a Grammy Award-winning drummer. He produced the Taj Mahal album called The Phantom Blues Band,
Mhm.
and or Phantom Blues actually. And he also played for Bonnie Raitt for many years. His claim to fame with Bonnie is that he drummed on I Can't Make You Love Me. That song, that was a big hit.
Oh, great.
And
yeah.
and he told me the story that he walked into the studio and they were hustling him along. Tony, we got to go. We got to. So he sits down and said, "What song are we doing?" They go, "I Can't Make You Love Me." So they do this song, and it was so good. And they said, "Well, let's do one more just for safety." But they used the first take. It's on that song. So that's him on drums.
That is a great song. I love
Yeah.
that song.
I know.
Wow,
I know.
great.
So, and then you have your keyboard player, Dave Kelly. Just like to
Right.
mention him. He's fantastic,
Yeah.
man. He is.
Ah,
I finally met him. I've seen him a bunch of times, but I never really met him. But at the Cascade Lounge, I went up to him after the show and I said, I just want to tell you, I love the way you play and your style appeals to me 100%.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know what I mean? His licks, his vibe, what he does.
just a
is
great
perfect.
guy. Just,
Yeah. And he's a great guy.
yeah,
I mean, he's just like,
he's like a
he's-
brother, you know.
He's been with you for a long,
well, he
long
treats me
time.
better than brothers sometimes.
Same with me.
Speaking of brothers, man,
Oh, yeah.
there are 6 Delgado brothers, right?
Yeah. Well, there were.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
passed away. We'll
Yeah,
get to that.
Danny passed.
But 6, and you're all musicians.
Yeah.
And, there's like 5 daughters, right? 5
Yeah.
sisters.
Yeah. Five
Five
sisters.
sisters.
Are any of them musicians?
No, but their siblings, their kids are. It's funny.
Oh,
Like they
uh-oh.
they didn't pick up the instruments, but like Madeline's kids are all musicians.
Yeah.
My
Wyatt-
sister
Wyatt-
Debbie has 2 boys that play music, and then Susie has an amazing son who's a bass player, and her daughter sings. So yeah, it's weird how that worked out, but
Legacy moves on.
yeah,
But the Delgado story is very complicated because you have Bobby, who was in the Exotics in the 60s. You had your older brother Eddie, who was in the Ambertones.
right.
And then you had your brother Jimmy, who sometimes played with you guys and sometimes didn't.
Well, we were brother Jimmy with the first incarnation of the Delgado Brothers was 5 Delgado Brothers. Bob was busy raising his kids at the time.
No, but at the time when we were jamming, and Jimmy was 16.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did the blues stuff at the East LA College.
Yeah.
So that he was in the band then. With
Oh yeah.
with
That's
Danny.
before the
That's before the
yeah, because I was still a little kid.
yeah.
So,
So Jimmy was playing before you guys got together with Eddie.
So I like to say that the first Delgado Brother paid gig was my 8th grade talent show. I got, because the year before I played with my friend Forrest Kornstrom, and I was terrified. And then the next year, my brother Eddie had come back from Vietnam, and he decided that we should maybe get together, right? So I said, well, I got the perfect gig. We could do my talent show. And so we actually won. So I don't know what we won, but Bob was in the band too. And
Yeah,
Eddie-
we were all
Eddie-
in the band.
Yeah, it was 6 brothers.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So we might as well, since we're mentioning the Delgado brothers, you got Steve,
Steve
brother who
Delgado.
plays great drums and is a great lead vocalist.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's still with you guys. And then Danny, who passed away. Danny was in the Exotics way
Yeah.
back in the 60s. So Bobby and I, when we get into talking about the Exotics, we'll talk about him and that whole era, which was fantastic. So it's a complicated thing. Then you guys, I remember seeing you guys in 1979, I'm guessing. It was some club in Hollywood, like on Beverly Boulevard, not too far into Hollywood, closer to LA. And virtually all of you were playing. I mean, maybe one Delgado was missing, but I mean, it was like a 9-piece band, and Eddie was playing. Maybe you weren't playing, Bobby. Were you not playing?
No, maybe
I think it was Eddie.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I remember you guys played "Miss You" by the Stones.
Yeah.
I remember that specifically.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because it was 1979 was the last year that we played as a top 40 cover band. And then after that, we went to Maui, which is, like, oh, yeah, that story. But we had, it was a frustrating time for me as a guitarist because, on my nights off, like on Sunday or Monday nights, I'd run off to the Baked Potato and I'd see guys like Larry Carlton and Jeff
yeah.
Vaccaro and all these guys. And I go, I want to do that. I mean, I don't want to play Miss You anymore, So when the opportunity with the band broke up, the Delgado Brothers, and also at the same time, I was in a relationship. I had a young son. And so I couldn't play. I had to get like a real job. And so we kind of went off on our own directions. And we were able to play the music that we wanted to play because now we didn't have to make money at it. And so that in hindsight, I think that has a lot to do with the way that the Delgado Brothers developed as artists and songwriters. And we weren't pressured into doing anything that we didn't want to do, so that worked out really well for us. Then Brother Bob, it was his idea to get a blues band together in 1984 with me and Stevie.
So when you guys came back from Hawaii,
That was
'Cause
it was 3 years later though, 3 or 4 years later.
Oh.
So But we were, we would jam once in a while, and I remember the one time that I came to the realization how great Bob was. My friend Jeff Carlson had hired me to play in this cover rock band, and I wasn't, I said, yeah, I'll do it. I learned a bunch of songs, but his wife was pregnant at the time, so he goes, I want to hire your brother Bob to be my backup in case I have to leave. So anyway, so Bob shows up to the gig with me, and we're hanging out. And
then I go to the hotel. Remember, I go to the hotel room.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you said I got an old hotel room. You said wait, because I didn't really want to. I was kind of tired.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really in the scene in the bar scene.
Yeah.
So I said, call me if you need me.
Right. Well, so we never had to call him because the baby wasn't delivered. So anyway, we bring Bob into a courtesy jam. So okay, well, since you're here, why don't you jam, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember when Bob started playing, I go, oh my God, no! Now I get it now. It's just like it was like a warm bath. It's just like everything just settled. And that's when I realized, I go, it's not so much about the chops, it's the vibe that you lay down. And you notice that when we played in Cascade Lounge, I thought the band had a real sublime vibe that night.
Absolutely,
really cool. And so, anyway, that's Bob.
So that was kind of the birth of the modern Delgado Brother band, right? I mean, that 84 led to that first album in 87.
Yeah.
And everything's gone since then. But like I said before, that it's a complicated story and a Hawaii thing. Ed and you guys went there, and Ed stayed there for a long time, and
Danny stayed there.
Danny stayed there for a long time.
Oh, you got your story, Mark.
Let me tell you my story. Okay. I love this. So, so we were my band, Mark and the Escorts, and the Men from Sound. Mark and the Escorts evolved into the Men from Sound in '66. We were really, really rivals with the Exotics, Bobby's band and Danny's band. So, so here it is, 1984, and I go to Hawaii with my then girlfriend, and we're in Oahu for a few days. Then we're going to take a little commuter plane over to Kauai. So we're waiting for the plane to take us to Kauai, and in walks Danny Delgado and his current band. And he goes, I go, Danny, we were like blown away that we ran into each other in Hawaii. And he tells his friends, I used to hate this guy.
That's Danny.
I used to hate this guy. And so, but he said it, half kiddingly. There was, it was half true and half, half humor.
I think mostly true.
Yeah, probably.
Danny would get in trouble like that.
But anyway, so I wound up hanging out with him when I got to Kauai that night. My girlfriend decided to stay home, and I went to the hotel where they were playing and watched them play and went up and jammed with them. And then we went back to their room afterwards and indulged in some herbs. And it was great. And I was there till 3 in the morning, and we hung out. And
right on.
It was great.
Yeah.
So I was sad to hear that he passed away a few years ago in Hawaii, right?
Right.
But he was great in the Exotics. I mean, he was
my brother Danny, in hindsight, I look back at his talent. Is like when he got drafted into the service, prior to that, he was a great guitar player. He had a very distinctive style. It's very kind of like Jeff Beckish, I don't know, funky.
Yeah, funky, like
a funky player, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so when he went to the service, of course, he's gone for 2 years. And when he came back, me and Jimmy are kicking ass. So he says, screw that. I'm not going to be a guitar player no more. So he took up harmonica, piano, singing, and he played.
And he wrote
a bunch of great songs. That as a matter of fact, I still have these old recordings that we did. And my regret is that we didn't stay authentic to ourselves when we did the first album, because we had some great songs and we didn't do them. So anyway, just one of my regrets. And
the other thing about Danny is he was a great showman, right, Bobby?
Oh yeah.
I mean, the way he'd jump around the stage, and he was a wild man.
He was hilarious too.
Oh, he's funny. And a lot of the photographs you take, he'd do something really silly in the pose. He was a personality.
But he's extremely talented, great singer, and everything. Anything. And then artist. He was an artist, and he could do puppet shows and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
Very likable guy. Even though he hated me, he was a very anyway.
Hey, Mark, what's up?
All right, we're going to continue here with Bobby Delgado. We're going to talk about the early days, before Joey's time. Okay, so now let's get back to the beginning. So it was either late 1963 or very early 1964. My band was Mark and the Escorts.
Yeah, because that was before the Beatles came out, right?
Yeah, I think it was before the Beatles came out.
Yeah.
Maybe it was late 63. I'll
Because
bet.
everybody everybody says they started when the Beatles came out, but
Yeah, oh.
most of us were doing it before that.
We can say that, yes.
Yeah.
Most people you hear, a lot of the rock stars, they say, well, I saw him on the Ed Sullivan show and I got a
And
guitar.
that was it. Yeah.
We were already rocking, baby.
Right.
So you were in the
Marky-
Exotics, and there was a venue, a place called the Cleland House, and it was like a community center, right?
Yeah.
And how did you guys get involved with the Cleland House?
Well, we were doing all that stuff at Belvedere Park with a toy loan. Remember the toy loan? We used to
Oh.
rehearse there. And so or the East Side Boys Club and all that stuff. And as soon as they found out that we played music, they always wanted to include us in. Well, maybe could the band play? So that's probably what happened. They
They
found
just
out.
invited you over there?
Yeah. It was
Well, the
weird.
way it happened for us was our guitar player, Robert Warren, remember he was an African
Oh
American?
yeah, Robert. Yeah.
Robert and Ernie, my drummer, Ernie Hernandez, our drummer, they met at the Cleland House. They, I guess they were giving lessons there. I don't know what was going on, but they met there. And then one day they were at Ernie's house, just the two of them playing. And Ernie came over to my house 3 doors down on McDonald Avenue. And he said, hey, come on over and jam with us. I had a guitar, had a little Gibson one pickup and a little Gibson amp. Come over and just jam with us. And I was like playing hide and seek or something. I don't want to go. Okay. So I got my guitar. I was only like 13.
Yeah.
Went over there, and that's how Mark and the Escorts were born. We started playing some songs. Before you know it, we're doing a bunch of surf songs, and then we're doing house parties, and that's how we wound up at the Cleland House, because Robert and Ernie had a connection there. So my memory is that we went there to play at a battle of the bands, and it was you guys and us, and there might have been some other bands.
So what year was that?
I'm guessing late 63. Could have been really early 60, but I'm
I
guessing.
don't know if we had Hendry. Was Hendry with us? Hendry
Yes.
Boswell? Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So we were in a battle of the bands right off the bat, and we wound up being in 2 or 3 of them. And that's when we became rivals, because we started out battling each other. Now there were some other bands there. I remember seeing maybe a Shaggy and the Superiors, maybe, or maybe
I remember.
RC and the Imperials. Remember those kind of bands?
Yeah.
I remember seeing some other bands there, and there might have been more than the 2 of us in these battles.
And it's a trip to see those pictures, because all these guys have these classic Fender P basses, Strats. I mean,
and
from the '60s. They're really. Oh man, and then,
things that are worth a fortune now.
yeah.
But so that's how it started, and that's how our rivalry started. And it was like we were like really trying to kick each other's butts.
Oh yeah.
And I think sometimes we won, sometimes you won, we both won.
Well, Mark, I used to like to dance. So when I wasn't playing, I go to the dances. A lot of times you guys were playing.
And
So
you danced to us?
Yeah, I'm dancing to you guys, and
Did you dance to us begrudgingly?
So I go back to the Exotics, right? Hey man, they're doing tax, man, they're doing all these things.
Oh, that's right. That's
We're gonna
right.
have to, so I wasn't spying on you guys, because I was going to the dance because I love to dance.
Oh, you're
But
talking
then
about
I would
later
hear you
after?
guys, I would hear you guys and take it back to the Exotics.
Oh, you're talking about other gigs later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you guys were doing that.
well, we definitely were hearing you, and sometimes we'd lift songs off of you. You probably lift songs off of us.
Yeah.
I remember one song we stole from you guys. You guys used to do a song called Nighttime. Do you remember that one? In the nighttime, something like that. I don't even know who the artist was.
It wasn't that Ray Charles song? No.
Maybe, but we learned that off you guys. But yeah, we would say, let's learn that one, and you guys would do the same thing. But then we were both students at Garfield High School. So the Exotics and Mark and the Escorts were both at Garfield until the rivalry continued. I remember seeing you guys playing at Garfield on the football field. And I think that's where I heard you guys do the nighttime. But yeah, we had plenty of time to see you guys, and we were on the same bill, which reminds me, let me get up to this now to show you. I went through all my flyers. And these are the dances we did together besides the Cleland House.
Man.
Okay, here's one. 4th of March, probably early 1964. Montebello Ballroom, And here's the lineup. Bill Ray, the Progressions, Mark and the Escorts, Exotics, and Exciters. Dressy Dress, Positively No Capris.
$1.50.
Discount cards, $1.75, other $2. Okay, and here's another
And
one.
Mark, did you guys play on the little balcony?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we
Yeah.
play on the top one,
Yeah.
sometimes we play on the bottom one, right?
We never made it to the main stage. We always played on the balcony.
Oh, really? Oh, we
Yeah,
played
yeah.
the bottom one too sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's another one. Big Dance and Show at the Montebello Ballroom, Friday, March 25th, 1964, with 5 big bands: the Impalas, the Exotics, the Prophets, the Men from Sound, the Entertainers. Oh, this was
So
a Men
Mark,
from
so
Sound
when
one.
did you become Men from
Yeah,
Sound?
okay,
After
yeah. This
that-
one got out of order here. We became Men from Sound, I think, early 66. So we were marking the Escorts 63, 64, 65, and then 66. Okay, here's one. So that one I might have read out of order, but it doesn't matter because we were Men from Sound. But here's another marking the Escorts. Now this is a gig at the Montebello Ballroom, 17th of September. And there's 2 gigs on this one flyer. And the top one you weren't on. But the headliner was Roy Head. Remember Treat Her Not,
Oh,
Treat Her,
yeah,
Treat Her
yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Did you see him play there? Were you there?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so we played on that bill. It was Roy Head, Treat Her Right, Little Ray and the Progressions, Mark and the Escorts, and the Royal Gems. And at the bottom of this flyer, it says, and this Sunday, September 19th, Mark and the Escorts, the Exotics, and the Royal Gems. And they misspelled Exotics, and it says Exoctics.
Yeah,
EXOC.
they did that a couple times.
Yeah, they did a couple times.
Yeah.
And then there's another one, Montebello Ballroom, 19th of September, Mark and the Escorts, the Exotics again, and the Royal Gems. So those were Mark and the Escorts gigs. And then here's some more Men from Sound. Movie and Dance, the Big Union Hall, Saturday, November 5th, 1965.
Wow.
This is a huge bill. Check this out. The Capitals singing their national hit, Cool Jerk, the Rivingtons, Papa Mau Mau,
Wow.
and other hits, plus the VIPs featuring Clarence Playa. As you know, the VIPs became El Chicano later.
All right.
The Men from Sound, the IBMs, Fabulous Sounds, Prophets, Exotics, and Apollos. Dig how many bands are there.
Man,
Look at this.
that was crazy with all those bands like
Well,
that.
you can't- this-
Oh, yeah, I could say.
But anyway,
Oh, yeah.
and then here's another one. Pre-Veterans Day Holiday Dance, 10th of November, 65. Montebello Ballroom, the VIPs, again, featuring Clarence Playa. Righteous Rhythms, Apollos, Exotics, and Men from Sound. And this is a biggie. This, another Men from Sound. Headliner Dobie Gray with the In Crowd, remember it? I'm in with the In Crowd. Okay, the Midnighters with Little Willie G, the Amber Tones, your brother's band, Eddie's, Men from Sound, Exotics, Runabouts, Essence, and Impalas, April 9th, 1966, Big Union Hall.
Man, there it is. Wow, that's cool.
But anyway, and
66.
now here, I don't know if you remember this, and now this
Wow.
is
The Ambertones, the
yeah,
Exotics.
this is the
What year
Huntington
was
Park
that?
Ballroom. Remember playing there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Royal Counts Dance and Show, they present Little Ray in Review, his whole review, which had the Rayettes, the Epics, Four Clefs and Progressions, the Ambertones, the Exotics, the Men from Sound, the Righteous Rhythms with Tina and Marty, the Go-Go Girls. Saturday, May 14th, 1966, probably. And we must have been a hit because they invited us back in August, almost the same lineup. Little Ray's Review, Men from Sound, Exotics, Delighters, Righteous Rhythms, August 20th, Huntington Park Ballroom.
Wow.
So, we played a lot together.
Yeah, and that was such a great time. Every weekend, sometimes you had 2 gigs in one day.
Absolutely.
You had to move over, like just moving all over LA, East LA, right?
We were only like 14, 15
awesome.
years old.
Well,
How much
what?
money do you think we were making each? I don't remember. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I
But I remember one night we opened for the Midnighters. Well, there's several bands before the Midnighters, And I was out packing my stuff, and little Willie G comes out in the back, and I'm there loading my stuff, and I look up at him and I say, "Hey, Willie, you guys sound great." "Yeah, man, thanks." And he had a roll of, I don't know if it was just all ones, but man, I was,
A wad.
here I am, just a young kid, and just looking at all that. I thought it was a lot of money. I don't know, but I never had any money like that.
Well, they were the Midnighters. They were pretty
kind of,
popular at the time.
oh yeah,
But-
they were getting pretty good.
But whatever we were getting, it was good for our age. I mean, we were junior high, high school.
Oh yeah, we were able to buy instruments, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It was good money for them. And don't forget, back then you could do a lot with $5, $10.
yeah.
Not like
Well,
today.
one of the gigs I remember that was at the Kennedy Hall and the Big Union Hall. We opened for Ike and Tina Turner.
Wow.
That was but that was a lot of bands. That was the Ambertones and a few other bands plus us. And I've never seen them before. So when we did we were one of the first bands up. And I was looking at them, I was standing next to the security guard by the door. And I look up and there they come on, and man, I was like blown away. I never seen anything like that. This kid, I was 16, 17 years old. And it just
Wow.
blew me out of the.
A young
And then
Tina
we were
Turner.
able to do it again. We were able to, but the next show was at the Big Union Hall.
Wow.
We did 2 shows opening for them.
Exciting times. Now we're just kids.
Yeah.
There's one more that we played together, and it's Heidi Ho presents "Come as You Are."
Oh yeah,
Dance.
wait, hold on, Mark. Heidi Ho, Danny was booking the band, right? So Danny would have to call him. Said, they said, "Hey, he was too busy. Somebody else, they got to help me out here." So Danny says, "Okay, I'll call the promoters." So Danny would call, "There's Heidi Ho Ho."
Heidi Ho. You know who the guy was? Remember Sam Nevada?
Yeah.
He was the guy that booked that. He was Mr. Heidi Ho.
Oh,
And
he
we-
lives right there right there off of Whittier. What was that street?
I don't know where he lived.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I just remember that he kind of had no neck, and we used
yeah.
to call him. We called him. He said he's the Ed Sullivan of East LA, and he was always like this little guy. And but yeah, he used to call me. We didn't have any agents. They used to call me up. I'd get a call from him or.
Didn't you guys had a booking agent?
No. The only
Oh,
time
we
when Billy
never did.
Cardenas, who just passed away, by the way, R.I.P. When Billy Cardenas was our manager, he got us into Rainbow Gardens in Pomona, Bel Air Rollerdrome in Pico Rivera. I think he got us in St. Alphonsus once or twice. But other than that, it was word of mouth, and people would call me.
Mm.
And it was Sam Nevada for the Little Union. It was Paul Carlin for the Big Union. Do you remember Paul Carlin? He was an ex-boxer. You don't remember him?
No,
Oh, anyway,
Marty-
he had,
Marty and
his
Danny
nose
did
was
the
kind of
bookings.
crooked. His nose from broken nose from boxing. And I remember sometimes we'd have to chase him around to get paid at the end. You had to literally chase him around and to get your money. But we got paid. Anyway, so here's the bill. It says Heidi Ho presents "Come as You Are" dance. Come as you are. That means whatever you're wearing. Featuring the Ambertones, the Royal Checkmates, the Men from Sound, the Emeralds, the Exotics, at the Big Kennedy Hall. That's right. He also booked the Kennedy Hall. I never heard it called the Big Kennedy Hall, but on this flyer they call it.
a couple of times I heard that.
Yeah. January 28th, 1967. So this is getting into psychedelic period.
Yeah.
Sergeant Pepper time. 8 to 1 a.m., $2 donation. 5 big make you dance bands. That's what it says. So
Man.
that's it, man. So we had quite a history. Now, the other thing that I remember about playing with you guys on the bill, and it's one of my favorite concerts ever from the 60s. This was our best band in the 60s, the Men from Sound. We had George Ochoa as the lead singer, frontman. I was on lead guitar and vocals, Ernie Hernandez on drums and vocals, Rick Rosas on bass, and Tony Rodas on keyboard. And he was a trained keyboard player. He was good. So that was a really good band. And then we were on the bill at Garfield High School. It was a double assembly. I hope you remember that night.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
It was an assembly. I don't know how it happened, why it happened, for the entire student body of Garfield. In fact, it was 2 assemblies. It was this gigantic auditorium with a balcony.
And the 2 music teachers were involved, right?
Yeah. Was it Mr. Henderson?
No, the
or
other guy.
Mate Arena?
Yeah,
Mr.
him and
Maturina?
and what's his name? Jim Gilliam. They
Oh,
were involved in that
okay.
because I know he was working with us.
Oh, really? So it's
Yeah.
kind of amazing. Think about it. We're talking about 1960, probably six, and that a high school would allow a rock concert to happen and have a full assembly for just the music
Yeah,
and double assembly.
and on the campus book, the yearbook, there's pictures of that. Did you know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are cool
You
pictures.
still have that yearbook?
I have, yeah, I got to dig it up though, but I have.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I have it.
Yeah, those are great pictures.
I have some of those
Our
yearbooks.
band.
Yeah. So the lineup, I remember most of the lineup. It was our band, the Memphis Sound, the Exotics, Euphoria, whose bass player was Conrad Lasano. Conrad was going to Garfield at the time. Of course, Conrad now in Los Lobos and been in them since the beginning, pretty much. And I just remember him just being really a showman, and he had every effect going through his bass, like fuzz tone and reverb, and just jumping around. So that was three really good bands. The fourth band was, I forgot who it was, but there were four bands. And it's burned so much into my memory because it was such a great thing to play in front of your whole student body when you're a
Yeah, that
student.
was, man. It was,
And I'll tell you the songs we did. We opened up with CC Rider. Doodly 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 doodly. The Animals version, and Ernie sang the piss out of it. We did 96 Tears. We did I Only Have Eyes for You, which you guys used to do too, right? I know that Ambertones did.
Yeah,
The Flamingos. That's
Did you guys do what?
Taxman.
You guys did Taxman.
Taxman. You
Yeah, I
remember that?
remember
Right?
that one. I remember that one. When you guys did that.
Did you guys take notice on that one?
Yeah, we did.
This is funny. Years later, 2007, I'm singing background with El Chicano at the Gibson Amphitheater, the Gibson, it's at Universal.
Yeah.
And it was ironically, it was because the Garfield auditorium where we played burned down.
That's right.
That year. Do you remember that? It
Yeah.
burned down around 2006 or something. So there was a benefit at the Gibson Amphitheater, and Los Lobos played, and the Midnighters, and El Chicano, Tierra, and Fred Sanchez of El Chicano invited me to just kind of jam and sing with El Chicano. So backstage, Conrad Lasano says to me, we were talking about that show from 1966, and he goes, yeah, I remember you guys played Taxman. I mean, that stuck in everybody's craw because it was like, I don't think anybody was playing Taxman at that time. That was a tough, great Beatles song.
Love that song.
Yeah. But anyway, you guys were great, and we got to do the show twice, for each two assemblies. And my big moment was, do you remember the vice principal of Garfield? Everybody was afraid of him, Mr. Welsh. He was kind of, vice principal. Remember, did you go to Griffith or you went to Belvedere?
I went to Griffith and then I went to Garfield.
Do you remember Mr. Bertia at Griffith? Mr. Bertia was the boys' vice principal. Everybody was scared to death of him. He would swat you, I got swatted by him once.
Oh.
Anyway, this guy was another vice principal people were afraid of. And he was so taken by the show that he actually carried my amplifier across the campus like he was my roadie. So I'm carrying my guitar, and the vice principal's carrying my super reverb amp, and we're going through the lunch area, and I'm going, this is pretty cool, man. This is a really highlight moment, man. So anyway, that's a great memory, man.
Yeah. Then so after that, how I went into the blues was Danny got drafted and things. So and then the band broke up, so we became a three-piece. Danny was still here, and then he got drafted. So, but before that, we talked to all the promoters for the Big Union Hall, all. So I told them what I was doing at a three-piece, and we're doing like Hendrix psychedelic stuff. We're doing some blues. So okay, I'll put you guys on you guys hit all the spots. We'll give you one shot. We did them all. Come back. Sorry, guys.
Really?
No, he didn't dig it. So well, after that, man, I was searching for gigs and I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back and do the East LA stuff. So I just
Oh.
kept going forward and it developed into the blues. And that's how I,
Well, do you think maybe it didn't work for them because it was too bluesy and it was just a three-piece?
well, yeah, that
Cover band wasn't
three-piece, and then we were doing like Hendrix stuff. They weren't ready for Hendrix yet,
Yeah,
and they were ready to, they wanted to dance and they were
yeah.
doing Purple
But
Haze.
as you know, we all got into that Cream and
Oh, yeah,
Hendrix.
everybody, yeah.
68. That was
But,
the next
but I'm saying
evolution.
that we were one of the bands that we could have been on, still on the circuit, but it didn't work. So, and I wasn't going to switch. I wasn't going to go back to do Motown.
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
yeah.
Not with a three-piece,
And that's what we did, right? We did Stax Volt, we did Motown,
Yeah.
we did British Invasion. I remember you guys did a lot of Kinks. We did Kinks too.
Yeah.
Animals. We did a lot of Animals. You guys didn't do too much Beatles, right? It was mainly more Stones.
More Stones. Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys were more blues based.
Right.
And we did more Beatles, but we did Stones and Kinks as well. No, before we get off the subject of the exotics, let's talk about the members. And I'll tell you who I remember. At the very beginning, there was Henry Brumfield on drums, African American,
Yeah.
who I knew in gym class at Griffith Junior High School before I even knew he was a drummer.
Yeah. It was a gym.
So, and then you had Marty Kaling on lead guitar, and you on bass. On keyboard, you had a guy named Felix.
Felix Reyes.
I forgot his last name.
Felix Reyes. Yeah.
Is there anybody else I'm missing from that early? On your brother Danny. That was
Yeah.
the early exotics.
Yeah.
The Cleveland House.
And then Richard came in later.
Later, yeah. So I was going to say next, but I wanted to say something about who was the last guy I mentioned? Felix. We hired Felix one time. I don't know if he told you, but when we were rivals, our keyboard player Tony Rodas, and I think we might have been the Men from Sound already, but Tony Rodas couldn't make the gig. We were going to play at my junior high school. I was in the 10th grade, and we were going to get to play at my junior high school I just graduated from for an assembly, and our keyboard player couldn't make it. So I asked Felix. I barely knew him, and he came and played with us. Did he ever mention that to you?
No, I never. No.
Yeah. So we hired the enemy keyboard player.
Oh man, we would have fired him right there.
Yeah, if you had known, you probably would have fired his ass. But anyway, he played with us, and it was a great gig. And it was during Beatlemania. So during the lunch hour, the girls, chased us around the cafeteria.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that was
chasing, screaming.
Screaming.
Anyway,
screaming our names.
so that was that. But then by the time we got to high school, you guys added Richard Alvarez and Larry Avila on vocals.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
I think Felix brought in Richard, and then Richard brought in Larry to do. We felt like we needed more like a rock singer, more because Richard did great ballads and stuff like that. And so Richard could do some stuff too, but we needed somebody with a little more edge, So that was Larry. So Richard brought him in.
And were any of the other you guys singing at the time? Was Danny?
Yeah, Danny sang. Let's see. Henry sang.
Oh, Henry sang too. Huh?
Yeah.
By the way, what I heard Henry became some kind of a preacher or something, or do you know anything about that?
I didn't hear anything like that. But
Yeah, I heard
I did see him. I did see him, and he didn't mention anything like that. I know he was a truck driver, and he had an accident or something. So there was legal stuff was going on, and he wasn't working for a while, and things weren't looking too good. But it's been a long time since
Well, that's the last thing I heard, that he was some kind of a reverend. That's what I heard. And then Marty Kaling has emailed me a few times over the years.
Yeah.
And he's still around.
Oh, without Marty, man, we would have fell apart like a cheap suit because he had all the chords down for us. He would kind of put it all together for us.
Oh, like a music director.
Yeah. So
he was also a gymnast.
Yes.
I think he told me his body's also.
And Henry too.
Oh, that's right. Henry was also in the gymnastic team at Griffith. But so the last time I heard from Marty, I think he was saying that his body's all screwed up from gymnastics.
I think he had a hip replacement, two knee replacements. And,
that's why I like to stay standing on the ground. Terra firma. But anyway, so I think we pretty much covered everything about that era. But just want you to say something about how you felt about that era and how it felt to be a part of it and what it was like overall.
Being a part of that, the whole scene was just incredible. I mean, being a young kid and not having to deal with any kind of violence like with my friends or, you know, the gangs or that wasn't even, that didn't even enter my mind because of the music.
Yeah.
So, and that was it, you know, so everything was like rehearsal. Okay, this school, my school class, you know, that's music classes. And that's what it was all about. And I loved it, you know, and
Kept us out of trouble, and we loved it.
yeah, kept us out of trouble. And,
You mentioned violence. Do you remember any violence at some of the shows? I remember we used to play at the CYO. Did you ever play at the CYO?
no, I don't think we.
Do you remember where it is? It was on
No.
Brooklyn. Now it's on Cesar Chavez, upstairs, the CYO hall. There would be fights there. I mean, you know, literally we'd be playing and suddenly we'd see chairs flying and people, you know, fighting, and we just kind
Oh
of,
yeah, we experienced a lot of that, but you know, they took care of us. They always put us in the corner. And said,
yeah,
don't touch these guys. You know?
yeah. Sometimes just get behind the amps and keep
Yeah,
playing.
yeah.
Yeah, but that was part of the gig. But and then there was rivalry between the bands, and like we've discussed, one band unplugged us one time.
We did a lot of weddings, and those were always pretty rough because they wouldn't pay you up front.
Mm.
So one time we were playing at the Armenian Hall
I remember
on
that.
Telegraph Road,
Mhm.
and they paid us the half when we started. So when we took a break, we wanted the other half before we went on again.
Oh,
So don't worry about it. We're going to pay you. Don't worry about it. No, we're not going to go on it. We're not going to do it. So we started turning our backs and unplugging. The guy turned back up, and the guy has a gun.
oh,
He says, "Hey, get your ass back up there. You guys are finishing the gig. We'll pay you. Don't worry about it." So we finished it up. Of course, they didn't pay us.
they didn't pay you.
There.
Those were the other halls, right? There was like the Croatian hall, the Serbian hall,
Serbian Hall.
certain American Legion halls. There were so many venues for us to play. It was not even funny.
Oh,
For
man.
teenagers,
It
that
was
was
just a great time, huh, Mark? It was just a wonderful.
and a lot of talent, right? A
Yeah.
lot of great bands.
Look, a lot of the bands that came out of it. You saw
Yeah.
that.
A lot of hit bands. A lot of hit bands came out of it. So yeah, man. Thanks for doing the thing, man.
I'm cool. Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Yeah, man. Great. I'm glad we finally got to talk about this. I think we've never really talked in depth about it. Maybe just a little sentence or
just a
two here and
little
there.
bit. Of
but
course,
to give-
there's so much. So there's
Oh yeah.
so much more. I mean, man,
But here's the good news. We were really kind of bitter rivals back then, but I think we made each other better.
yeah,
Because you guys were so good, we kept up and you kept up with us. We
absolutely.
kept learning
They
songs.
kept us going. Yeah,
That competition made us both better, and that's
yeah.
that's
And then to be still,
there you go.
yeah.
Cool,
And I'd
man.
love to go. I would love to go out. Let us know when you play out there. We'd
Oh,
love to go out and see. you.
okay. I'll keep you posted, man. My gig starts in October, so
Okay.
hopefully you guys can come out.
Right on, Mark.
So, man, thanks a lot for doing it, and we'll get Joey back up here.
Okay. All right, Mark.
So we're continuing with Joey Delgado, and we're going to cover the period like 84 on and the album period.
Right.
So
Okay.
the first album you did was on High Tone Records. And
Correct.
as I recall, it had something to do with you guys played at the LA street scene,
Correct.
and you played a certain song, and the author of the song was in the audience.
Yeah. So
And tell that story.
the LA street scene, if you're familiar with it, it was so much fun, and exciting, and we always wanted to play it. And we tried and tried and tried. And one year we got actually signed up to play it. And my brother Jimmy was in the band at the time. But then Jimmy made the fatal mistake of asking for money.
Oh, big mistake.
A big mistake. So anyway, of course, we got canned. And then the next year, I think, or maybe even a couple years later, my brother Bob applied for us to perform at the LA street scene. And we had learned our lesson, and we said, we're just going to go in there and have a good time and see what happens, right? So we ended up playing on the steps of the courthouse. That was the blues stage at the time. And when we were getting ready to play, Joe Louis Walker, who was also on High Tone Records at the time, had played just before us, and it was awesome because he was killer, right? And so we were all fired up and everything else. And but we didn't know him. I didn't know his relation to High Tone or nothing. And so we went on stage, and one of our favorite artists at the time was Robert Cray. And he had an album called False Accusations or something like that, I guess. And he had a song called Where Do I Go From Here? And we love that song. My brother Stevie sang it. It was kind of like a funky Thrill Is Gone kind of groove, you know, minor mode. I love that kind of stuff. Anyway, so we did the song, kind of made it our own interpretation, and we opened our set with that song. Unbeknownst to us, Dennis Walker, who wrote the song, was in the audience to see Joe Louis Walker. No relation. They were just so, you know, of course, Dennis perks up and he goes, "That's my song. These guys owe me 28 cents." You know, that kind of, that was a story later on. So after the concert, he seems to think that we met backstage, and I don't remember that. But the following Monday, Brother Bob, because he was a contact on the LA Street Scene application, Larry Slovin from High Tone calls him up. I said, "This is Larry Slovin from High Tone Records, and we're very interested in talking to you guys about doing a record deal." And Bob goes, "Yeah, whatever," hangs up on him. So then he calls back, because he was working at the time at USC, and all these pranksters in the building with Bob, and he assumed it was one of his buddies, because it was a big deal that we had played this festival. Anyway, so Larry called back and convinced him, no, it's not a joke, blah, blah, blah. So we end up working with Dennis Walker and Bruce Bromberg, the guys who wrote that song that we had interpreted. And so Dennis was real excited about working with us because, he assumed that we weren't writing music. He thought that we were just a cover band, and that he thought that he could, mold us into like a Robert Cray style blues band. So, and there again, like I said, in hindsight, I wish we would have stayed more true to ourselves as far as writers, because I thought, in hindsight, we had some great songs that were just as good, if not better, than the ones we ended up recording. So, meanwhile, while we're recording the album, Dennis Walker and Bruce Bromberg, who were associated with High Tone, but they weren't like, executive people. Larry Slovin was the money guy, and then Dennis and Bruce were like the creatives. And so, meanwhile, they're teaching me about publishing, recording, copyrights, and all these things. And that's where the money is, and blah, 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 right? So we get a $25,000 advance to do that album in 1987. And we spent $18,000 of that money on an attorney to get us publishing deal, because under the guidance of Dennis and Bruce. So when I presented that contract to Larry Slovin, he says, "Well, if you guys want publishing, we don't have a deal."
Oh yeah, oh my God, no story.
So we $18,000 out the window, right?
Oh.
So, but because we still wanted to do the record. I mean, it was back in the day, you couldn't record an album on your own. In 1987, you just didn't have the means to do it. Maybe you did. I wasn't aware of it. Studio time and all that stuff. I didn't know how to do it.
Pre-digital age.
Oh yeah. And so we went to a recording studio in South Central LA called Haywood's, and the guy's name was Leon Haywood. He had a hit in the 60s, I believe. And I can't remember what the song was, but he made a lot of money and opened up his own recording studio. It was an old furniture store, but it was awesome. He had like multiple 24-track machines, and he had custom rooms and everything. Really, really nice. So we did the album there, and we thought we had arrived. We thought we had made it. And then it wasn't meant to be, that they wanted us to get on the road and travel cross country in a van. I go, "Well, where do we go?" "Oh, you just go and they'll hire you. There's plenty of venues out there. Just drive to Phoenix, And meanwhile, me and Bob and Steve all had young children at home. And so that wasn't an option. So a year later, High Tone dropped us, and I got to yell at the guy on the phone and tell him, he was no support whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. And he let me rant, and then he hung up. And so anyway, fast forward 10 years later, I worked with Dennis Walker on another project, and I'm at his house, and he was so prolific as a songwriter. He had like a phone book full of songs that he had written, and he's thumbing through it. And he goes, "Hey, Joe, look at that. I'm still making money off the Delgado Brothers." He goes, "Did you ever get a check?" And I said, "No." So I called the publishing company. I gave them my name. And of course they said, "Oh, we've been looking for you. We didn't have an address to send your check." And I didn't ask how much. So this is 10 years later. 2 weeks later, after I made that phone call, I get a check in the mail for 25,000 records, $89.
That's it for 25,000 records.
And that was
Oh,
just,
my
that was
God.
my writer's share. It had nothing to do with publishing, nothing.
Yeah.
And so I took my
Yeah.
kids out to dinner they were 8 and 5 at the time. And I said, whatever you guys want, Black Angus, my
For
son's eating lobster.
25,000 records.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And
That's the business.
had I sold 25,000 records with the way I set up now, it would have been great.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway,
Now, weren't you guys like a three-piece on that album? Was it
well,
you, Steven?
technically we were, the piano player on our band at that time was a gentleman named Billy Steinway, who I just saw him play last night. He's in a band now with Pauly Serra, and they have a called Groove Legacy, and he's an amazing jazz pianist. He does like a Joe Sample Fender Rhodes style kind of guy. And so I just saw him last night, and it was good to see him.
The three of you are on the cover. Only
yeah. So at the time I offered Billy a partnership in the band, and he declined. No, he didn't want to be tied down. So he's always been an independent keyboard gun for hire.
But you had didn't you have David Hidalgo play on some stuff? He's on the album.
That not on that record. He played
Really?
on our second album.
Well, that's the next one.
Yeah. So that's the one that so in the early 90s, the Delgado Brothers took a break. It was a combination of things. We had a keyboard player in the band that we weren't crazy about, just there were some issues with him and stuff like that. Anyway, and we were terrible at HR, things. So we couldn't discipline him or get rid of him, or we didn't know what to do. So I tell the brothers, let's just take a break, let's take a break. And so, anyway, so we did. And 1 year turned into 2 and 3 and 4.
Wow.
But meanwhile, we're all raising our kids. I was still playing with other groups and kind of getting around town doing different stuff. And then John Duke Logan, mother passed away, and he inherited a bunch of money. One of his dreams was to start a record company. And so the first band he signed was us. And he said, how dare you guys break up? I'm going to get you back together and blah, blah, blah. And so the plan was for me to write the music, and he was going to write the lyrics at the time. So the first song we were going to try to write together was a Church of Almighty, and it was a groove that my brother Bob had come up with. It's just a groovy, swampy thing. And but we had the line Church of Almighty, and I believe John Duke Logan came up with that line. And so he goes, oh, I'm gonna take this home and I'll work on the lyrics. I'll bring it back next week, right? So he comes back, and we're from East Los Angeles, but we're not. There's a lot of things that we don't do, like that relate to Mexican Americans in East LA, like low riding and all these kind of things. We don't do that. So Duke came back, and he was trying to tell the story of us, hanging out at the Almani Legion Stadium, and I had never been there. And I said, okay, with Duke, this is not going to work. And then Stevie goes, why don't you let me try it? So Stevie goes home, and the very first song he ever wrote for the Delgado Brothers was that song.
Now, was that true that the Church of Almighty was basically your mom's garage or something?
Yeah, exactly. And it had to do with my the way my mom treated our friends and family, and because it was a hang, it was a 1-car garage, little tiny garage. But I'm a little crazy. I tricked it out. I had lights hanging in there. I carpeted the walls, and then, I had a little recording booth that I had a 4-track TAC and a 2-track half track. And so I was doing demos in there, and it was a lot. I mean, it was a really cool hang. And but my mom, if you came to hang out with us, she'd come in with a plate of tacos or something like that. You guys hungry? Taquitos, and and she was just always like really cool like that. So,
by the way, when you were living in El Monte at that time, but when you were living in East LA earlier, right, in the 60s, where were you guys living?
Well, we were on the house that I remember is on First and Mednick, and that was a converted pharmacy drugstore, something like that. It used to be like a little market, so you'd go in and they'd have a soda shop and a counter, and then you could buy groceries there, kind of a multi-purpose room. So anyway, it was so successful, the owners moved into a custom-made house right next door to that little shop, and then they ended up converting the store into a house. So it was kind of a makeshift 3-bedroom house with a kitchen and a living room. And so there was 10 of us at the time living there.
That was pretty close to the Montevilla projects, wasn't it?
Right across the street. Yeah. Going back to that house, as I remember, being a young child, and occasionally the Ambertones or the Exotics would rehearse in the living room, and there was always pretty girls around and hanging out, and I thought, man, I want to do this. And I was like 5 or 6 years old, at the time, and
Wow.
I just remember being so exciting, and then even what was that guy's name, the local Channel 5 George
Putnam.
Yeah, George Putnam. So he had come to our house to do do a story on the band,
You're kidding.
right? And I remember him walking up to me and asking me a question like, "So do you play music?" I go, "Oh yeah, I play guitar," and I'm totally lying. Anyway, so the following day, my Aunt Stella calls my mom and says, "Hey, I just saw you guys on the news." And the story got twisted around in a way that they said, even though they don't have money to eat and they don't have money to do this or that, they have money to buy instruments, and all this, that turned negative. You know what I mean? It was horrible.
Well, that guy was very right winger,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So they try to make us look like, like instead of taking care of business, we were
Poverty stricken.
Yeah.
So you guys moved to El Monte. Well,
Yeah.
another thing before we get onto that second album, which we got to get to, and one of your early teachers was Danny Diaz.
Oh yeah, of
Tell me
course.
about
Yeah.
Danny. At what
Yes.
point did you start?
Well, that wasn't until we moved to El Monte.
Mhm.
And so my brother Bob would have these jam sessions on Sunday afternoons, and my father was gracious. My father was a really tough man, but he would allow a jam session on Sunday afternoons, as long as Bob did the yard work or whatever he had to do to get keep my dad happy. And so brother Bob met Danny Diaz at a jam session in Montebello or Monterey Park, I forget where it was, but they were like in this garage jamming. And Danny Diaz, this is what I think happened, is Danny Diaz happened to walk by, and then he goes, "Hey man, what are you guys doing?" And Bob goes, "Oh, well, just jamming." And he goes, "Mind if I sit in?" And Danny Diaz goes in there and proceeds to blow him away. So needless to say, they got together, and they kind of form a band. And but these jam sessions on Sunday were legendary. I mean, literally there'd be a line of guitar players down our driveway to wait to jam with Danny and brother Bob, and I forget who the drummers were. It always changed around a little bit.
Mhm.
But I got to be in the room, and my brother Stevie got to be in the room, but we were primarily doorstops. So because in the room it was so small, Bob's bed had to lean up against the wall, and so my job was to keep the bed from sliding into the room. So I had to sit on the floor, and then Stevie had to sit in front of the drums so the bass drum wouldn't slide. So we were like, because Bob goes, "You're going to be in here, I'm going to put you to work," right? So
That's how you started your showbiz career.
Exactly. I'm a stagehand.
Doorstop.
Doorstop. But anyway, that's why so I'd be there all day, and I loved it. Danny Diaz, like, oh my God, he was amazing, right? And then the beautiful thing about Danny, though, at the end of the jam session, everybody's kind of settling down or whatever, he'd sit down with me and he'd teach me stuff. So he goes, "Here's your major scale, here's your minor scale, here's your finger positioning, practice like this, do this, here's your picking technique, do all this." The next week he goes, "So how'd you do?" Oh, okay. I would do it because I was so excited about learning, but he was awesome. And then one session, because Danny was teaching at Johnny Thompson's guitar, right? One of his students, Bob Robles, comes in, and Danny goes, "You got to hear this kid." And Bob Robles at the time was like 16. So Bob Robles comes into one of the jam session and proceeds to play White Room note for note, Eric Clapton at 16 years old, just incredible. And so Bob would do the same thing. He'd sit down with me and teach me stuff. And so with the lessons I learned from Bob Robles and Danny Diaz and other different guitar players that would come in, I became a guitar teacher at Johnny Thompson for a couple years. Nice. And I would literally ride my bike from El Monte to Monterey Park and teach 2 or 3 hours and then ride back,
Wow. That's two great guitar teachers there.
Oh yeah, dude. And to this day, when I give a guitar lesson, I basically give the same lessons that I received when I was a kid. Although what I add to that is the business aspect of the business. Like a lot of times, for instance, kids don't want to put in the time. They want instant gratification. They don't
Yeah.
understand the concept of 10,000 hours.
Right.
And then the other thing that they don't understand is that, you know, if you want to be an artist, you have to allow yourself the financial freedom to be an artist. So that means get a part-time job that allows you the flexibility to play music, but it doesn't impede your music. So it's me and my brother Steve and Bob have done that all our life. So we're not dependent on the income that we make from our music.
Very smart.
And I believe it shows, you know, like we don't have, I learned that from the first album. In other words, the lesson of the Dark Angel on the first album was to teach me that I'm never going to do that again, you know.
Yeah.
So
Getting to the second album was the one you were talking about with Juke.
right.
Juke
Logan.
Logan. Yeah, he was a harmonica player, great harp player, right?
Right.
And it was on Macombo Records. Is that the label he started?
Yeah, that's the label he started. And the beautiful thing about that label, there again, like I told you, when I signed the deal with John Duke Logan, it was essentially a one-page deal, and it says, "I get this, you get that. Upon my death, you get 100%." And you know, when he passed away, I now own 100% of the 4 albums of the Delgado Brothers. Not my, you know, the brothers do, not me, but you know, yeah.
Fantastic.
So, and that record, the Let's Get Back record, there's the John Mayall story.
Well, yeah, talk about that. That's really important. He wound up recording a couple of your songs, right?
Right. So
great blues breakers.
John Duke Logan, he was well aware of the publishing part of the, so he kept 49% of the publishing, and I kept 51%, as opposed to High Tone keeping 100%. Right. So, so when the album came out, John Duke went to Joe Uwaley, who was the drummer for John Mayall at the time, and he says, "Hey, if you get this record to John Mayall and he covers a couple songs, I'll kick you down some cash," right? Basically was the, and so they're on the bus, you know, touring all over the country. Joe Uwaley gets the record out and he puts it on for John Mayall. And John Mayall fell in love with If I Don't Get Home and Something About My Baby. So he was coming out with an album called Along for the Ride, which is featured like anybody who's anybody, Steve Miller, Billy Preston, Billy Gibbons, on and on and on. So, and Gary Moore. Also, we knew he was going to record 2 of our songs, and the urban legend was that Eric Clapton was going to play on If I Don't Get Home as a guest. And at the last minute, Eric bailed on him. You know, he couldn't do it or had something of a prior commitment. But fortunately for John Mayall, Gary Moore was down the hall doing another project. So he called, "Hey, would you want to do on the song?" And he goes, yeah, let me hear it. So he listened to it, one song, and he did that song in one take, and it's incredible. It has like millions of views on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who co-wrote the song with you? Did you have a co-writer?
Me and Stevie.
You and Steve, your brother.
Steve. So that's a good story too, because that song, going back to my day job, you know, life, I'm in Bakersfield, subbing for a friend of mine who was going on vacation with his wife to Hawaii. And, you know, I got to run, I'm a subbing for him at the Red Lion Hotel in Bakersfield. Little tiny hotel, nothing going on. But, you know, I had to do something in the morning, something at 5, and then I'm off the clock, right? So my friend who I sub for says, "Hey, Joe, if you want to come to my house and have a beer, whatever, you're welcome to go there and hang out instead of staying at the hotel." I go, "Cool, that sounds good." So I go to the guy's house and I'm sitting on his lounge chair and I'm watching TV, and on the nightstand next to the armchair, there's an envelope and it says, "Just in case," right? And I thought, and obviously it was for me. I mean, it wasn't like he was hiding it from anybody. He just put it just in case. And I said, wow, I thought maybe he left me money for beer or something. You know, I don't know. I opened it up. It's his last will and testament. Because they were flying to Hawaii, and, you know, he was terrified of flying and blah, blah, blah. So that's when I had the idea of, what if I don't get home, you know? And, you know, same thing for me, you know, because I was traveling a lot. What if I didn't get home? You know, it's always that idea in your back of your head, right? So I gave the concept to Stevie, and he came up with the lyrics. So that's so that, and then the music part of it, at the time, I was influenced heavily by Chris Kane. He had come out with an album called Late Night City Blues, right? And my cousin John had given me Chris Kane's album, and in 87, I guess it was 88. And what happened? So, and I didn't respect my cousin John's, you know, he didn't know, I didn't think he knew what he was talking about musically. Right. So I had this album and I put it away for a year. And then so fast forward to a Golden Sales gig that we did in Long Beach. Dan Jacobson, the promoter, he goes, "Hey Joe, I need you to run sound and open for Chris Kane." You know, because I would do that. I would run the sound. He'd kick me down $200 extra, whatever. So the Delgado Brothers opened for Chris Kane. And then once Chris Kane came on stage, my jaw dropped. I said, "Oh my God, you know who he is?"
Yeah, you know,
Oh
who
my
turned me
God.
on to him is, you know, Chris Montez.
Yeah.
Chris Montez told me, you got to hear this. He sent me a Chris
Yeah,
Kane album. He's
he's-
an amazing blues guitarist.
So I fall in love with Chris Kane. I as a guitarist, I learned every riff, you know, that he played. I learned every song. And we became like a Chris Kane cover band. And it was good for me, you know, to learn, because it made, for me, it made sense. It was a cross between Larry Carlton and Robin Ford and B.B. King and all these different things, but I could comprehend it. So that made a big difference for me as a guitarist. And then Chris Kane becomes one of my best friends.
That's
So
amazing.
so I can't do my Chris Kane impersonation in front of Chris Kane. So it forced me to find my own voice. And I really, I'm so grateful for that, because I don't know where I'd be, you know, it'd be, and he's just a sweetheart. He's just an awesome man. So
That's incredible.
so
So, but getting back to John Mayall, for those who
Yeah.
don't know, he was an early English blues guy, one of the original English blues guys, and Eric Clapton played with him. All kinds of great players went through him, right?
right, he was like college for blues guys out of England, and you know, Jimmy Page was in his band, Mick Taylor was in his band, Eric Clapton, Peter Green, you know, just anybody that's anybody. So he's considered the godfather of British blues, and he had his band called the Blues Breakers.
Right.
And me and brother Bob are Blues Breakers. We're part of that, you know, that thing. So when we found out that John Mayall was going to record our songs, of course, we were very excited about it. But halfway through the process, John Mayall calls me up and says, "Joe, I need you and Bob to come down to the studio because it's not working. You know, the guys that he had are not working." So me and Bob are going to go. And the day before we're supposed to go, John calls back, goes, "No, I just need you. Tell Bob, never mind." And Bob gets, "Screw that, I'm going." Right?
Good for him.
So we show up at John's studio, and we knock on the door, and John Mayall answers the door, and it goes, and he had this face like something bad happened. He goes, "I'm so sorry." I go, "Billy Gibbons is on his way right now, and he has to leave to Texas, so he has to do his part right now. So if you guys don't mind, can you wait and you know, till he's done?" And Bob goes, "Billy Gibbons is going to be here."
No, we got to leave.
And so Billy Gibbons walks in with a brand new Les Paul off the rack at Guitar Center. He had just come from Guitar Center. He goes, "I just bought this from Guitar Center. You should have seen the kid I bought it from." He was like, you know what I mean? That look, that must have been hilarious. So we sat there and we watched Billy Gibbons record his part. He plugged in all this crazy pedals and stuff like that, and he got the Billy Gibbons sound, and it was so much fun. And then we got in there and we played our thing. And so John says, "Well, Bob, since you're here, why don't you do your part?" And so the rest is history. Bob ended up playing on the track, and me with Gary Moore, and then John Mayall and the rest of the band. So
Awesome.
yeah. So anyway, so needless to say, because of the publishing setup that we had with John Duke Logan, we made a lot of money. And so off the initial pressing. And so we started our own company, Bell Asher Records, which, you know, we released our last 3 records are on our own label.
So the next one was A Brother's Dream, right?
Yeah, Brother's Dream and Learn to Fly, and then 2 Trains.
And Learn to Fly is, you know, I love that album. You know that. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I mean, that's my favorite album of yours. And you guys took a long time on it, right?
Yeah.
Well, how many years?
Well, that's the thing, you know, we're not under pressure. You know, think about a lot of artists that have to do, you know, they take a lifetime to do their first album, and then they're forced to try to do a second album in a year. That's just not, it doesn't make sense to me. But, you know, of course we would like to be a little more prolific than we are, but, you know, what are you going to do? And, but I believe the quality of the songs, that's what matters to us. It's like, I'm not going to release something that I'm not proud of. And
Right.
it's a process with us, because especially the last two records, like Learn to Fly and Two Trains, have become a collaborative effort as writers. So, you know, we don't say I wrote the song, you wrote the song. It's the brothers. If it's going to be on the record, you know, regardless of how much you contributed, you know, you get a writer credit. You know, that's the way we work it. And it's awesome, because now you're not reluctant to give up a part or do something, or, you know, it's just a
Nice.
better democratic way to do it.
But so you took a couple of years on the album. I mean, actually,
Well,
recording-
yeah, well, for instance, the first album came out in 87, second album was 99. The third album, Brothers Dream, was I think 2003.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting process too, if you want to move on to that one. But what happened, I was going through a separation with my first wife, and my mother, meanwhile, was moved into a nursing home because she had developed Alzheimer's. So I'm now going back to the Church of El Monte as a single man, and I have this house, you know, with nothing to do. I'd go to work maybe and come back, and I'd have nothing to do, watch TV or whatever. So I called Ray Moore, the guy that he was there the night you were there, Saturday night. But anyway, he's recorded our last 3 records, right? And he's an old friend of mine. He used to work as an audiovisual technician with me in the hotel industry, but now he's doing sound and recording for the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove. So I called him up and I said, Ray, what would it take to do a record? This is at the advent of, you know, people doing home studios and stuff.
Yeah.
This is way in the beginning. And so he goes, well, I have access to a 24-track Atari, but you're going to need a truck to get it, you know, to move it. And I said, I'll be there tomorrow. So I ran a truck with a lift gate, and this thing's the size of a washing machine. It's huge. And so we bring it back to my mom's house, and I set up the living room as the control room using 2 Mackie old style mixers. And then I ran closed circuit into the garage where Stevie's drum set was, so we could see him, and then ran all the mic lines. And then the first bedroom was a percussion room. My guitar amp was in the bathroom. Keyboards were direct, and we recorded Brothers Dream that way.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was on a 24-track Atari, and I really love the way that record sounds. That's.
And how did you do the brothers, Learn to Fly? Same stuff, or?
Well, no. So by then, I was working for Disney at the time, and I was making a pretty good amount of money because I was working with one of the top executives, Andy Mooney, who's now the executive of Fender Musical Instruments. So, but at the time, Andy was the CEO of Consumer Products. So my job was to travel with him all over the world. Literally, I'd go to Australia, Japan, Milan, you know, everywhere. And then he would have these seminars at different resorts, and I'd run the equipment for a week at a time, and it was amazing. It was a great experience. And this is before I owned my home, so I had a little more disposable income. So our mutual friend, me and my wife's mutual friend, Lisa, had a little grandma house in the back of her house, and I made a deal with her. I go, how about if I convert your little house into a studio, and I help you with your storage, because it was just packed with junk. I mean, it was just bad. But I needed a place, you know, that I could record and rehearse. So we converted our little house into what we call the Luna Lounge. And I made the back bedroom into the primary room, and then the kitchen was now the control room. And then we had a little living room that we called the Luna Lounge, and that's where we used to hang out and party and dance and stuff. And but that album was done in that house. And so a lot of that equipment that we used for that studio got moved into my studio here. So we were able to piece it apart, and then that house got demolished. You know, they tore it down, but that's how I did this studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that Learn to Fly album, as you know, I love the song Learn to Fly. I've heard it countless times and never get tired of it. Great song, great recording. Everything about it's perfect. I love that horn arrangement.
Yeah, that's Lee Thornburg.
It's like a Steely Dan quality horn section.
Oh yeah,
arrangement.
Yeah. So first of all, the song "Learn to Fly" is about it's about my nephew, and my nephew was coming of age. He was in his early 20s, I believe, at the time, and he's living with his parents. And so he was having difficulty like breaking away. He felt like he was responsible to make sure that his parents were okay. And then, you know, everybody knew it but him, you know, that he was kind of like being, you know, restricted and his, you know, growing up and letting go, getting him out of the house. So because he was a responsible young man, he was working, he had, you know, had a good job, it was all this stuff, right? And anyway, it kind of came to a head where, you know, they were having these issues and blah, blah, blah. So that's the story of that song. It has to do with him, you know, breaking free and you know, knowing that he's going to be okay and that they're going to be okay.
Well, like you mentioned at your show Saturday, you said that like pretty much all your songs are influenced by real people, real events.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
And I'm real proud of that. I'm real proud of that.
It gives it more meaning, makes better songs, makes for better songs. Then Man Without a Plan is a great song. And then the one you did with the Chambers Brothers.
Yeah.
Was that If the World? Was that it?
If the World.
Well, how'd you get the Chambers Brothers? Oh my God. And by the way, I went to that album release party that you had in Monrovia at some hotel.
Yeah.
And the Chambers Brothers showed up.
Right.
And it was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, those guys, I don't know how that happened. Well, I do know how it happened. Our friend Sherry Pruitt, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I produced a blues record of hers, and we took her to the IBC, and she came in third place. And you know, but you know, I support her as much as I can. She, unfortunately, she's on our Learn to Fly record. She's the voice that sings on Melissa. So, and this is before she had a stroke. So after that album came out, unfortunately, Sherry had a stroke, and she'd been, you know, a prominent figure in the LA scene as a blues singer for a long time, Long Beach and all that stuff. And anyway, after she had a stroke, of course, people wanted to reach out and help her as much as possible. So I went to the benefit concert for Sherry Pruitt, and the Chambers Brothers were there, and they were singing. And I'm in the audience thinking, okay, how do I get these guys to sing on my record? I mean, I was like, I was so moved, and I was thinking, oh my God, I got to make this happen, right? So I called Sherry the next day, and I said, can I get, you know, the guy's number? Oh yeah, they're real nice. You like, you know, they'll talk to you. So I called Lester Chambers, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and I said, this is Joey Delgado, and we, you know, we're the band, and I'd love for you guys to sing on this song. And Lester goes, we don't sing rock and roll anymore. We're just gospel. And I said, well, I respect that, but this song is not a rock and roll. And I sang it to him over the phone. If the world could be like this, you know, I sang it to him. And he goes, man, I like it. I think we could do that. You know, it was a little more complicated than that, but I convinced him into doing the song. And we talked about payment and all this other stuff. So we were scheduled to record on a Saturday afternoon at the little house at our friend Lisa's house, right? And the Wednesday before the event, Ray Moore calls me up. I can't do the session. I've got to be at work or something like that. And I'm like, oh, and these guys are, you know, at the time, this is almost 12 years ago now, I guess. And they were old then. I mean, and, you know, it was really difficult to try to get them, you know, like herding cats, like, how do I get these guys to do this? And how, you know, and anything was going to throw it off track. So without skipping a beat, I called them back. I never gave them Lisa's address. I go, okay, the session on Saturday is going to be at this address. And our friend Peach, who lives in Santa Monica, offered her studio, and Paulie Sarah was going to be the engineer. So we go down to Peach's house, and all 4 Chambers Brothers are there. And it actually worked out great because we had this, I don't know, $10,000 Manley mic. Are you familiar with those?
No.
Oh, it's like, it's unbelievable. It's just, so all 4 Chambers Brothers were in the room. They're standing about 5 or 6 feet back from the microphone, and they arranged all their own parts. It took them all, you know, almost 3 or 4 hours to do it. And I'm pacing outside like an expectant father. I just like, you know, and they did it on their own, and they came out and they were like done, and we barbecued and had a great time, and they've been brothers ever since.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the Chambers Brothers had a big hit. Was it the late 60s? That Time.
Yeah.
Time has come today.
Well, you know, you need to do is watch the movie Summer of Soul.
Oh, I've seen it.
Well, the first 20 minutes are primarily the Chambers Brothers. you know.
And they do that song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that record, and my mind has been psychedelicized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were incredible. And they, you know, so Willie Chambers tells a story about when they were, you know, in the 60s, the Rolling Stones come to town, and the Chambers brothers show them all around, take them to Hollywood and all this other stuff. And then once they became a big hit, they never called the Chambers brothers back. So he's a little bitter about that, you know.
Oh my God.
But he showed them all around town, and they hung out with Jimi Hendrix and just a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're one of the few sort of black acts that fit into the whole psychedelic
Right.
thing, you know, Sly and the Family Stone. There's
Right.
But anyway, at the Monrovia show that I went to, the release party, I just remember they're really tall guys, right? And Stevie got in front, you know, got off his drums and stood there to sing the song. And it's like he had two redwoods next to
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
Little guy in the middle, but
Oh
they
my
sang
God.
their ass off.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just tell everybody out there, get all the Delgado Brothers music, but if you're gonna get one album, Learn to Fly. It's a masterpiece.
Oh, thank you.
And listen to that song with the Chambers Brothers, it'll blow your mind. And of course, Learn to Fly. And I also love that song on there. There's a song your brother Steve wrote about you, right? To You, is it My Brother or something?
Yeah. Oh, brother.
Really touching song, man.
Oh, yeah.
Very soulful. Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, that was my 50 when I was 50 years old. I don't have a in here right now, but if you have time, do we have time? Or how are we doing?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So real quick, when I turned 50, my brother Stevie gave me this. Remember the Ford punt, pass, and kick competitions?
Oh yeah.
In the 60s.
Mhm.
So Saturday morning, one day, I get up early, and I'm having my cereal. My mom comes into the kitchen. She goes, "What are you doing up so early? What are you doing?" I go, "Mom, today's a Ford punt, pass, and kick, and I'm going to go, and they're going to have this big competition, blah, blah, blah." Because they had gone, we had a meeting or, you know, an assembly earlier in the week, and the guys from Ford punt, you know, came, and they had all these trophies out. And it was like, you know, we were all excited. You know,
How old were you at the time?
I must have been 9 or what was that? It was Rosemead. So 9 or maybe 10 or 11.
Mhm.
Right. And Stevie was 7 or 8. So there was a cutoff, like, you know, 9, 10 and under, 10 and over, you know. So I'm in the 10 and over category. But what happened? So I'm sitting there having breakfast, trying to rush out of the house. And my mom says, "Where are you going?" I go, "Well, I support punt, pass, kick." And she goes, "Take your little brother." And at the time, Stevie was a little pain in the ass, right? He was, you know, I'd take him to my friend's house. He'd get in a fight with my friend's little brothers, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I go, Stevie D, you know. So anyway, so I reluctantly take him and he's following behind me, you know, and I'm like on my way to the park. So he gets there, and I said, "Well, you're over there, I'm over here, and I'll see you at the end of the day." So he goes over there to, you know, the 7 to 9-year-olds or whatever they are, and I'm over there from 10 to 12s. And end of the day, I come back with a big ribbon. This participation. Stevie comes up, you know, on the other side of the field. He has like 3 trophies, the big ones. He goes, "Help me, help me." And I'm 10 years old at the time. I turn around and say, "Fuck you." He loves that story. He loves that story. So anyway, for my 50th birthday, he gave me a trophy.
Oh, that's incredible. And that
And he wrote me
song,
that,
right?
and then he wrote me the song too.
Beautiful song.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny, man.
Yeah. But it's a true story.
And we should say here, I mean, what a great singer Steve is. What a great voice he's got. And, you know, you're a hell of a singer too.
Oh, thank you.
Both of you are great singers, but there's something about his voice tone and, you know, in style. It's incredible.
Right.
And,
Right.
you guys harmonize perfectly. You know.
Yeah, I love harmonize, you know, like as opposed to, I'd rather almost harmonize with them than sing lead. I feel like, you know, it just, I don't know. It's just, you know, your own insecurities as a
No, but you're a strong lead singer. There's no question about it. But, but Steve, you know, what's amazing about him that he sings so great and he plays so great drums at the same time.
Yeah,
you know, the singer drummers are a rare thing, but to play both so well at the same time.
He's I think his playing is sublime. You know, it's nothing over the top. And but it's between him and Bob, it's an amazing groove.
And there's a lot of grooves. I mean, he's not just, you know, straight, simple 4/4 blues or whatever. He's doing all this all these different grooves, singing his ass off. Huh?
And then he's singing on top of that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so man,
It's a birth defect of some sort. I'm
yeah,
not
it
sure.
must be. It must become a kind of a freak.
But
of
there
some
again, you know,
kind.
going back to my little brother.
Yeah.
So we were growing up, and me as a musician, I tried to play every instrument imaginable. If you put something in front of me, I would try and play it. Like, but you know, like tenor, alto sax. I loved alto sax, and I couldn't sound like David Sanborn, so I gave it up. And then piano, I'm okay piano player now, but I'm not nowhere near Dave Kelly's caliber. And then but I tried to take up the drums, and I'm there drumming, and Stevie goes, I want to drum.
Really?
So I go, okay, go ahead, check it out, you know. And the rest is history.
Oh
So
my God.
little brothers, you know.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So your latest album is that Two Trains, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
recorded at the same studio.
No, this is recorded in my current house in the living room.
Mhm.
So what I did there was I actually have a recording studio, a converted one car garage that has like a lean-to garden shack. And so my house was built in 1924. So the garage itself, you could drive a Model T into it, but if you drive a modern car, you couldn't open the doors. So it's just basically it was storage at the time.
Mm.
And me and my wife were actually looking for a space in town to rent as a business, you know, to run my audiovisual and have a recording studio. And there was no way I couldn't afford it. So we agreed that I would convert my garage into a studio. And I'm glad I did. It's just like the best investment I ever made.
Mm.
And so for Two Trains, what I did here is, you know, with my partner Ray Moore, I designed the room around his specifications. So, you know, the main room was a certain way, and then the booth was a certain way, and blah blah blah. So for the recording session, what I did is I ran two 24-channel snakes in the living room from the control room, and we set up in the living room. We did that about 3 or 4 times. Did all the basic tracking like that, and then overdubs were done in the little room here in the studio. And then we had John Avila studio that we did overdubs too.
All right.
So but there again, that record took a while too. That was, you know, we started that one in 2013.
Wow.
And that took but you know, as a matter of fact, the majority of those songs were written in Palm Springs. There was we had a mutual friend of ours, I mean a good friend of mine, Pat Krieger, and she had a mid-century house in Palm, really nice house with a pool and everything, right? So I had asked her, I go, what's the possibility of us staying in your house for the weekend so we could write? Oh yeah, no problem, you know.
Right.
So I went in on Thursday, and I did a preset of all the sound system and recording, just, you know, basic recording so we can get ideas. And then the brothers showed up on Friday, and we stayed until Sunday. And the majority of the songs, like The River, I can't remember the other songs exactly, but like Two Trains, that was all written there.
Wow.
Yeah, we did like a round robin, you know. So like, what idea do you got? Okay, then we'd work on it, and then so
Nice.
it was cool. That was a great way to do it.
The record came out in 2018. Did you say, was Bobby involved in the writing as well?
Yeah, we all were. Yeah,
Mhm.
we, like for instance on the River, that song is primarily a Dave Kelly composition musically, but there's a middle part with boom 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 boom, total Get Smart riff, and that's Bob's idea. So,
Hey, tell me about the that contest that you got involved with in Nashville, the blues.
yeah,
contest.
so
That was a major thing.
yeah,
So
so
when was that?
that was in 2016.
So,
So we had a friend of ours, Michael John, who ran the Ventura County Blues Society, and he did all the Ventura County Blues festivals and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what you do if you have a blues society in town, like say the Long Beach Blues Society or the Ventura, so you can send a band from your society to the International Blues Challenge to compete against bands from all over the world. So Michael John comes up to me, he goes, Joe, I've been sending bands for 10 years to the International Blues Challenge. I'm tired of losing. You guys are going to go. And so it wasn't like that. It wasn't like he couldn't, you know, just wave his hand. It had to be legitimate. So there was a local competition. We won that local competition. and then we traveled to Memphis. And this is what they do, is they raise money for you to travel. So
It was Memphis. Yeah, I
Yeah.
said Nashville. It was actually Memphis, right?
right. So people were very, very excited about it. We were reluctant, we were reluctant to do it. We're not a competition kind of band. We had a terrible experience with the East LA Rock and Roll Battle of the Bands back in the day. But anyway, but it was fun. But that's not our thing. I mean, I really don't. Not that I don't believe in it. It's just that I didn't get it at the time. But so anyway, so Michael John says, no, you guys are going to go. And so we did the proper channel. We did the proper local competition, and we ended up winning the local society thing. And we traveled to Memphis. And so, you remember our film that we were working on.
Yeah.
So we had a 3-camera crew follow us to Memphis. And I remember getting there, and they said, okay, this is on a Wednesday evening. And they said, okay, everybody, all the bands, it goes, send one representative with brains to the orientation. And I don't want to see the whole band there, just one guy that, could disseminate the rules and all that stuff. So I go, and it's a good sized bar that probably holds, it's probably the size of the Cascade Lounge, just something like that, packed, full of one person from each band. And I look around, everybody has the same look like me, like, what the hell, right? I remember standing up on the bar stool, looking around and said, there's no fucking way we're going to win this thing. I was just like, I mean, it was like impossible. It was like 257 bands from all over the world. And it was just crazy, right? And so, but we had a plan, because, and thanks to my wife is, she helps me a lot with a lot of this stuff. And she goes, well, don't go in there. And first of all, she tells me, as a guitarist, she goes, don't play for guitar players, play for the women, play from the heart, is what she means, And I love that advice. It's like, it really helps me a lot.
Yeah.
So this thing, the competition, we didn't want to go in there. We have 25 minutes. So you could either do 3 or 4 songs, or you could do what we came up with was a short play. So we broke the set into 3 short sets. So 3 songs, 3 songs, 3 songs, all abbreviated. And they all, they're all like standalone little montages of the set. So we were able to get 9 songs in a 25-minute set. And so I thought it kept everything moving, and it was interesting. On the Friday night, the semifinals that we got to BB King's, they gave us an extra 10 minutes. So we were able to stretch out, and man, we had a blast, right? As a matter of fact, I don't remember playing. It was so exciting. And so the next day we go and to the finals. We made it to the finals, and we're one of the very first bands of the day. And it's like an 8-hour day of all these, the finalists and all this stuff and all this crazy shit that's going on. So we're wandering around. I'm like walking in and out, blah, blah, blah. So finally they announced the winners at the end of the day. And I'm feeling pretty good. Because I'd seen a lot of the other bands, and there was this one guitar player that I felt was threatening. And they tell you, do not do a cover. They want to hear original music. They want to, they want original artists. They don't want to see a cover band up there. So the guitar player that was threatening to me made a fatal mistake by dedicating the song to BB King, and he did Thrill Is Gone note for note. And I said, whoo. So needless to say, they announced me as the Albert King Award winner of all the guitar players that day. Wow. And I won my beautiful white Les Paul that you saw. And they gave me this category 5 boutique amp. I mean, this is like amazing stuff, right? And then they announced the Delgado Brothers as the winners. It's just like unreal. So meanwhile, we have our camera crew there. Everything's filmed, and you saw the rough cut of our film, and this was now going to be the end cap of that documentary. It was all going to come into. So the director of the film confiscates our film. He says that we had a deal, and now he wants to own the rights to my story. He wants to own the right to our music. And I said, there's no effing way that's going to happen. And so to this day, I've not seen any of that footage.
Oh shit.
So we're still working on it. But the bottom line is with that is that it doesn't really matter anymore. That that has passed. Although I really believe that really would have helped our career immensely. I mean, it was a great little story, you know. That first of all, no Mexican Americans have ever won the International Blues Challenge. No band on the West Coast of this side of Mississippi has ever won the best. And so, and then, you know, needless to say, me as a guitar, you know, but no one knew. No one ever knew.
Unbelievable.
So,
And wasn't your prize you got to play in Europe, tour Europe?
well, there was a ton of things. There was like part of the prize was you get automatically get booked on all of these festivals all over the world, and on blues cruises, on, you know, festivals all over the country. We went to Europe, we went to Brazil, you know, just based on that win. It was incredible. Yeah. And
So
and
where
you know,
did-
so in hindsight, I was like, okay, I get it now, but I didn't, you know, I probably never would have competed. I didn't know, you know.
Where did you play in Europe? What countries?
In Belgium, and Amsterdam. Well, we played Amsterdam and Amersfoort, and a few other places. We've been there 4 or 5 times, but it's primarily the same area, Amsterdam and Amersfoort, and then Belgium. So,
And you went to Brazil, you said?
and Brazil, we went down to it's called Ilha Comprida, and it means Long Island or something, Long Beach. And so you land, you fly into Sao Paulo, and then you take a van, 4 or 5 hour van ride to this beach area, and it's so poor, you know, it's really a poor area. And then, you know, if you want to go tourist shopping, it was sad because they did have little shops along the beach, right? But they're selling like Lakers, Dodgers stuff, you know, just like weird stuff, you know, had nothing to do with Brazil. And anyway, that was a great experience too, because they had, like, on the beach, they had this giant tent. It probably accommodated 500-600 people, but the inside the tent, it was all black tablecloth linens. The sound stage and the lighting was all world class. We had a beautiful dressing rooms and all this stuff, and it was free to the public.
Oh.
So, and we did really well. It was good. And we
Did that tour lead to other things, or was that just all that was related to that contest?
well, some of the things have repeat, you know, things. A lot of them did not, you know, like and you know, it's okay, you know, I'm not, but I really believe, like, you know, had we finished our film and told the story all from, you know, front to end, that would have helped a lot. So
Yeah. You guys had already done some festivals. You over
Yeah,
the years,
yeah,
you did
yeah.
many festivals.
Right.
And who are some of the people you're on the bill with? I remember seeing a thing on YouTube where you're jamming with Dave Mason.
Oh yeah, that
Pretty
was
cool.
that was the Bluesapalooza in Mammoth, and that's a great story too, because it has to do with my day job, right? So actually, my neighbor at the time, Vicky Luton, she goes, we were up in Mammoth and we met the guy, the promoter for the Blues, and I told him all about you guys, and you have, this is right when Learn to Fly had come out, and so I told him all about you guys, and they want to talk to you about, you know, booking your band. So I got a hold of him, and he liked what he heard, and he goes, yeah, we'll bring you up here. So you'll play Saturday in the afternoon, like open up the festival, and then you'll play opening for Dave Mason at the Hangover Party on Sunday morning. So we go there, and our old percussionist Victor Bassetti knew a lot of the guys that were in the Dave Mason band, because he toured with Los Lobos, and so he knew a lot of these, you know, big time players. And so anyway, we ended up meeting, I forget the bass player's name now at this time, Jimmy Johnson, or yeah, I believe his name is Jimmy Johnson, is a bass player for Dave Mason, and we had met him many years earlier, and so he was all happy to see us, and we were having a good time, and so, but that Sunday morning we get there, and we're trying to set up, and Dave Mason is just spread out on the entire stage, guitars and keyboards and percussion and drums and everywhere. And so there's really no room for us to play. There's like, what do we do? You know? So the guy go, okay, give me a minute. And so they ended up making space for us, right? And we're playing, we did our show, and then I have to leave immediately. This is on a Sunday morning, and I wasn't even going to watch Dave Mason because I had to be back at work that afternoon. And I had a guy subbing for me, but I still had to be back at work. And so I'm getting ready to leave after our show. Stevie comes up to me and goes, Dave Mason wants you to jam with him. I said, no fucking way. So anyway, I go, cool. Yeah. All right. So I made a phone call and I told my buddy, I go, I'm going to be running late. This, all right. No word. Don't worry about it. I got it. So I'm there and Dave Mason does a show. And at the end of his concert, he's leaving the stage to go, off, and he's waiting for an encore. He's obviously going to get an encore. So he walks off the side of the stage and I stick my head so he can see me. He goes, come on. So he brings me up, right? I get on stage and I'm putting on my guitar and the roadie comes up to me, goes, this is not going to work. He goes, we're tuned down a half step. And I said, shit. So I get it ready. I go, what song are you going to play? He goes, All Along the Watchtower. I got that. 3 chords, E flat, but E flat minor instead of E.
Yeah.
So the rest is history. I mean, my family was all there. Everybody's in tears. It was incredible. Yeah, it was awesome. And so anyway, and then Alvino Bennett, the drummer from Dave Mason's band, is a dear friend of mine now because of that. I've met him. I've known him for years, and I get to play with him on a regular basis. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention? Any other stories? Any other things?
I'm not talked out, but yeah, just that I'm just proud of the fact that we're still making music. We're not done. We have hopefully with the footage that we had from this last party and from other things that we have, that we're gonna put some sort of documentary film together, because it's always been my intent to tell the story of my older brothers and how the music scene in East LA inspired me, and how created this incredible family of musicians that San Gabriel Valley people and all over, just it's amazing. Yeah. And so but I think that's part of the story that I really think needs to be told, as far as because this doesn't just come out of nowhere. And like the influence that we have, you have, my brother Bob has, or Steve has, they're all different, but together, that's what makes the Delgado Brothers sound. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks for doing the show, man.
Thank you, Mark.